Episode 8, Human Nature Beyond the Beast and Angel. Welcome back to Food for Thought, the podcast where we dive deep into life's biggest questions. Today we're asking, what is our true nature? Are humans inherently good or inherently bad? Are we noble beings with a higher calling or just intelligent animals following instinct? There's a real tension here. On one hand, we teach people that they're nothing more than evolved primates. Then we're shocked when they act like animals. Can we expect virtue from beings we frame in purely material terms? Or do we have to believe in something more, something that transcends nature? This episode explores identity, morality, accountability, and the powerful paradox of what it means to be human. Today I'm joined once again by my longtime pal, Tom. Tom, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks. Always a pleasure.
Today, Tom, I'm going to grill you quite a bit and I'm going to add my 2 cents in there and we'll see what happens. So let's get into it. I have,
That's good.
okay. I have all of these questions we're going to go through. We might not be able to get through all of them today, but I want to get through most of them. Um, Let me just jump into the first one and ask, let's say, an obvious question. Okay, do you believe people are born inherently good or inherently bad? Or maybe some kind of a complex mixture of both? And what does that mean for how we raise or educate
Yeah, I think it needs to start with, the definition of what is good and what is bad, right? Because there's one way
them?
of looking at the world that basically says there is no good and bad. It is what it is, and what you call it is sort of up to how you were brought up, or what culture you came up in. If you're a farmer, maybe clearing out vermin, by trapping and shooting is because it destroys your crops, is totally fine and normal. But for, animal lovers, that may be a total no-no. So for one person, it's like, yeah, totally good, Yeah, it allows me to actually make sure that my family doesn't starve because I can then produce more crops, right? But hey, you're killing little furry animals. Oh my God, that's totally terrible. How can you do that? You're so cruel. No, there's always this duality of, how you look at a situation, and who
Okay.
decides, right? Where what's proper, let's say, to do for any one human being. It depends on your point of view. Right? Same thing can be good and bad at the same time for two different people. So,
Okay. No, I agree there is a certain level of subjectivity to that question. But I think in general, we all agree upon certain things. Murder is bad, stealing is bad, compassion and helping people in general are good, right?
yeah, if you
So
throw in the
when
in
we get back to,
general, yeah.
right,
Um, but you can always find examples where, back to, like, the first example I gave, like, where you can, yeah, where you
no,
can.
yeah,
I
no,
think that there's
I
cases where
understand
you
that.
can totally excuse, like, murder being actually a proper thing to do, in some circumstances. Like, we go to war, right? People die all day long.
Yeah, but that's
Because
war
it's a
is not
just war,
murder. War is killing. War is not
uh,
murder. War is
and that's
killing.
different.
It's not the same thing.
Yeah, murder and
Absolutely.
okay.
It might sound funny superficially. It might sound kind of strange, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah, it's a different circumstance for sure. But yeah, anyhow, in the end, the results are pretty similar, which is, there's a bunch of dead bodies, left behind. So, uh, anyhow, that's all I got on that.
Okay. Well, let's get back to the question. You never answered me. You all you did was tell me about the subjectivity. Do you think people are
Well,
born inherently good or inherently bad?
no, it's a mixture. I mean, no, I'm saying I can't really answer the question because of, it hinges on the common definition of good and bad, right? And I don't necessarily, yeah, subscribe to that. So if I have to give an answer, it's going to be a mixture of both. I think that's the closest to, actually think about how the world works.
Okay. A long time ago, I heard this theory. I don't remember whose idea it was. Forgive me. I have to look it up. If you're patient, I'll look it up to find out who said it. But have you ever heard of the guy saying that people are born a tabula rosa? Actually, let me look this up. Let me see if Chat GPT is working today, and I'm gonna say just a minute who the guy said. Who said what? Excuse me. Let me see here. Oh, okay. Finally, yeah, it's giving me information that it sounds pretty interesting. The theory that people are born a blank slate or tabula rosa is a foundational idea in philosophy and psychology. Sometimes people mistakenly say tabula rosa, which is red slate in Italian, but it's not the way you spell it. It's RASA,
Yeah,
and it's
that's
telling me
yeah.
the key thinkers, John Locke and Aristotle. Basically, people can be taught anything. So there's a certain amount of subjectivity to this. I agree with you 100% on that. But in general, when something is good or bad, I think we get a gut feeling. We get it in our gut that something's really right or wrong, or at least that right or wrong with relation to how we think, with relation to how we were raised, which also includes society, our upbringing, and family, and relatives, and parents, and many things like that.
Yeah, like super simple examples are going to be, when you see your kid getting hurt for whatever reason, like you're generally going to think that's bad. When your kid is being, I don't know, treated well or fed or you know supported in whatever way, you're generally going to think that's good. And that's like a super super simple example. Um,
Right. No, I don't think it's really one or the other. I abide by that theory about the tabula rasa. Rasa, I think it's
yeah,
pronounced.
that's a
You have
yeah, like
you
you.
you have to forgive me on my Latin.
Yeah, I
It's
think
not so
it's
good.
blank, right? It means blank slate.
Yes, yes, blank slate. That's right. So that's what I think. I think it's not really one or the other. It's how we were raised, and society's influences. But that's that for that question. Let me jump to the next one. Okay. The next one reads as follows. Okay, bringing into evolution into the mix. If we teach that humans are simply advanced animals, should we be surprised when we actually act like animals, doing Lord knows what, uh, in accordance to our instinct and impulses and not ideals?
Well, the short answer is no. Then you got the two point of views of, the point of view of the from the group within which you're born to, and then there's the individual point of view. Like what do I want, and what do I feel like doing versus does that play along with what's good for the survival of the group and for the well-being of the group, right? And those often don't align. Um, but if you want to continue to have the group support for your own survival, then you sort of need to play along with the rules that the group sets out or has established over time that
Right.
are beneficial for the group. So,
Yeah, that kind of bleeds into the next question, but we'll get to that one in a moment. Okay, so my 2 cents. Here we go. If we teach humans that they are simply advanced animals, No, we shouldn't be surprised when they act like animals, in the sense that following their instincts to do things and following their impulses, which usually do not lead to good results according to society, I would say. Um, but I think it's also dangerous because we're gonna be jumping into religion really quickly here in a moment. But if we teach people that they're simply just animals and then that's all there is to it, eat, sleep, reproduce, lather, rinse, repeat kind of a thing. No, we shouldn't be surprised when they act like animals. But it's dangerous because if you teach them that they're only animals, you're negating the spiritual part of these people that belongs to everybody. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're an atheist. Is that correct?
I mean, I'm not denying that there may be a God out there, but I'm pretty sure that it's not the form, not in the form that we've been accustomed to. Like the Christian religions or the Judaic religions, I think that's the portrayal of God, that way is not what it's gonna, not that we're ever gonna know, but it's probably not how it's gonna actually turn out, or what it's actually gonna turn out to be.
So you're agnostic, basically. You're kind of waiting around for evidence, in other words, to see what the truth really is.
Yeah, I do like evidence, like making
Okay.
a decision based on what I actually see happening in the world rather than, from stories I'm being told that have Mm. The people that tell them, have no real base for and have no real, it's like from generation to generation, right? The myth gets told over time. And just because your parents told you the myth, like, doesn't make it true.
Well, I kind of agree with that, but it depends. It's a very complicated issue because I'm not gonna be talking bad about anybody's religion today, but it depends on the tradition, the religious tradition that you follow, about whether it's going to be a myth or not. Because some religions are based on some truth, but they're not the whole truth. So it's really
Yep.
really
Yep.
difficult to have that conversation,
It's definitely a
and
mixed bag.
basically, yeah, I would say so. And one of the worst things you could do is tell somebody that their religion is wrong. People surprisingly throw their morality out the window very quickly when you tell them their religion is wrong. They actually act opposite of what their morality has been taught to them for their whole lives. All of a sudden, they're ready to kill um, or murder for
Oh yeah,
something
right.
like that.
And the Crusades, the jihad, I don't know, there's probably a bunch of other examples that are, less well known. But
Well, yeah, those are part of it. But this whole thing, maybe we could have this discussion another time too. But because that is like a whole discussion in and of itself. But that's what I think for that third question. Basically, evolution is can be, in my opinion, dangerous. Why? Because it's negating human dignity to a certain point where you reduce people down uh, to an animalistic nature without giving them any hope of any kind. Just throwing them out there, and they're like, "You're an animal. Go be an animal." And that's why you have a lot of decay in society.
it sounds to me like that's essentially an excuse for people to do whatever without regard for the benefit of the group. Right?
Yes,
And I think that's kind of what it all boils down to. Like, as long as you do things that in general make sure that, assure or improve group survival and well-being of the group, then it's generally going to be a good thing. And people will generally not try to, stone you for it. You may get praised for it, right? Or you may get pushed up the ranks for it instead.
maybe. Depends on the way the society is structured. Maybe. Not sure if I can answer that question. But we're on this subject, so let me throw the next question at you, which is related to this subject, what we're talking about in this very moment. The next question reads: do evolutionary explanations for morality, like survival and cooperation, fully account for things like sacrificial love, guilt, or compassion, if you will? Is it factored in there for the survival of the group?
Well, before I try to answer any of that, what do you mean by
Yes?
sacrificial love?
You're making sacrifices for other people. Whether you're making big sacrifices, maybe putting your life in danger and hunting, for
Like,
example. You know,
you mean endangering yourself or doing the difficult thing for the well-being of the family, for example, like so that
yes,
your wife and kids can, essentially survive or have it better.
right. But not just your wife and kids, the whole tribe, if you will,
Yeah, yeah, okay.
is going to benefit.
Evolutionary explanations for morality, like survival and cooperation, for the account. Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say that's about right. Because again, I think in the end, what's considered good in a society um, probably has its roots, or like it seems logical that it has its roots in essentially group survival, tribe survival. So this, yeah, for me, that totally plays well with that.
Okay. Let me try to throw you a curveball here. You mentioned the word good in the last sentence, basically. And at the beginning of all of this discussion, we mentioned, you said good and bad is basically subjective. So, how do you define good? What's good for the group is good, what's bad for the group is bad?
Well, I would say good is survival and benefit or growth of the group versus because that's the only thing that allows the group to persist through time and not vanish. So yeah, I would boil it down to essentially, yeah, if you allow the group to grow and yeah, continue through time, right? Persist, survive, that's generally that would generally be under the umbrella of things that are good for the group, and everything else goes in the opposite direction would generally be considered bad.
Okay. So, whatever's good for the group and you personally is good, whatever's bad for you or the group is bad. Whatever is not your benefit is bad.
Again, I would equate good to the growth and survival of the group, and I would equate bad to anything that hinders the growth or survival of the group. We
Okay.
got to look at the group as a whole organism, right? Not as a bunch of not at individuals one by one, but it's like consider the entire group, a single animal or a single object, right? Look at it that way.
Okay,
So
but which makes me ask, what about the individual?
yeah, I
What
mean,
about individual survival? How does that
ants in a
factor in?
colony, you know, at which level of abstraction do we want to sit? Like, because we can jump, go up one or two, and or go down one or two, and then the explanations and the theories are going to be a little different
Right.
based on which level of abstraction we choose to essentially reside in for the sake of for the discussion.
Well, after all of that, I would have to say, it does not seem to me the evolutionary explanations for morality account for certain things. That's just, my initial reaction. I would have to probably think about it and maybe do some research and try to understand better. It doesn't seem like it.
You have any example that come to mind, or
Don't count too much on what I'm about to say because a long time I heard about that they found people, remains of people, bones and such, with like broken and reset bones on these ancient bones that they found. Okay, So these people, and like
All
the
right.
evolutionary thing, let's say, the evolutionarily speaking, if you're talking about group survival, some person who got hurt, let's say hunting, where they broke their leg, the thing to do would be get just leave them there and get rid of them, or maybe finish the job yourself and take them out, kill them, because they would be a burden to the group. However, they have found
Maybe.
cases where ancient man had broken bones that were tended to and people were taken care of after the fact. Now they may have limped after the fact, after a broken leg, but they were still in some certain sense considered useful to the group.
I mean, right? Sometimes it's easier, cheaper, and quicker to fix the car than get a new one.
No, I don't follow you, man. You lost me.
I mean, look, it depends on the specifics, right, of the situation. If you already
No, no,
know
no.
how
If you
to,
got if you're hunter gatherers, and this guy gets hurt on the hunt, how do you get him back to the tribe? You bring him back to the village. How? You got to carry him.
yeah, you drag his ass back.
He
I don't know,
can
like,
you no, but I'm saying it takes time, energy, the investment of food, maybe medicines with herbs to help this guy heal. And
yeah,
let's say evolutionarily speaking, this guy's pretty useless to you at that moment because he can't hunt.
yeah.
So you leave
But
him out in the
let's say,
where he was hurt and let him starve, and worry about the group because the food you can bring back may be better served helping someone else.
well, let's
So
assume
the
the
two do not
lifespan.
mesh in my mind.
I disagree with that because again, I think if the guy was already pretty old, all right, maybe it's right, maybe leave him behind. But if he's, let's say, in his prime, or let's say, assume the average um, uh,
Lifespan, yeah, yeah.
lifespan of like 30 years for, a male, in a hunter-gatherer society. Let's say at 15 they start hunting, and so they get 15 years out of. You get 15 years
No,
of hunting out of the guy, and there is, 10 of you, it may be, your group of, let's say, 10 guys that do the hunts as a group may need you. And if there is 10 of you and one of you breaks a leg on a thing, maybe you can like just throw him on your, not like pick him up and carry the entire body weight, but like you can help him support himself and he can limp back to the camp, and then, hey, once in
okay.
a camp, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
if the
I think I
situation is really
follow what
tough.
you're trying to say, but they've actually found bones like that. So it's not theoretical. It's a fact that they found
Yeah,
people with injuries and
no,
healed
I
bones
believe
from.
it.
So they were being taken care of.
But once you drag the guy back to the camp, and like let him lay in his own bed, and have his wife or other people who stay behind, at the camp, tend to him and bring him food from time to time. In 2 months' time, he may be walking him, on his own, and he's still got, let's say, 10 or at least 5 years worth of hunting in him. So I don't know. Seems like an okay
Yeah, but
trade.
you can't reconcile the two because he's not contributing anything to the group anymore. He's dead
While he's
weight.
limping,
While his leg
at
is
that
broken, he can't
moment.
walk. Right.
But you can gotta consider the individual's value over time for the group, right? Not just like, 1 second by 1 second, like,
Right.
right?
So
Like,
basically, you're giving credence to what I'm saying because you're going into it more and more. You're coming up with the hypothetical situations about why they would do it, and you're going over the
right.
survival cooperation argument for the evolutionary morality. So you're saying you disagree, but you're actually giving credence to what I'm saying by giving me examples.
Right. Yeah, maybe I got lost in this one a little bit.
Oh yes, I threw you a curveball. That's good. I love that. Okay, let me read the next question, and we'll see how it goes. If humans are biologically wired to behave a certain way, why do we still bear moral responsibility for our actions?
Didn't we do that one just now?
No.
All right. Okay. Yeah,
It's
never
a little
mind.
bit
Sorry.
it's a little bit different. Let me read it again. It's no problem. If humans are biologically wired to behave a certain way, why do we still bear moral responsibility for our actions? If we believe everybody's just like a meat robot, that we're all programmed, biologically wired to behave a certain way, why is killing or murder considered bad and you go to jail? Why is stealing considered wrong? Isn't it just an evolutionary adaptation to steal? Why are we held to a moral responsibility?
You got two parties to this dilemma. The perpetrators and the victims, right?
Okay,
Points of view there that don't align, you
that's
know.
right. And therefore,
Me as the perpetrator, if if I want to steal from you so that I have it easier, yeah, that's good for me. But once I'm stealing from, like you're taking away from their, stores and the things that they worked for, right? And spent energy on. This hinges on the on there being two different points of view. The ones that are doing the
okay,
stealing
so
and those
why
that are
is
being stolen from.
okay why is the victim's point of view upheld and not the perpetrator who thought it would be better to steal your, I don't know, your bicycle because it would be easier for him to get to work? Why is he held morally responsible for his actions? Because I think there's more to it than just being biologically wired in a certain way.
Yes, but I think again, it's
That's
going to be the group mentality that um, takes precedence, right? If you're gonna live with in proximity with to each other and maybe in the same village, in the same camp or whatever, then stealing from one another is not optimal.
Well,
Uh,
that's
it's
evolution
probably
for you. It's survival of the fittest. I'm bigger than you. I'm stronger than you. I can push you down and steal your bicycle, so I don't have to walk to work.
well, yeah, but then but being a tough guy in a and basically not giving a shit about the others in a group is probably gonna get you killed because the 5 or 10 guys that you pushing around are gonna get together behind your back and gonna basically take you out. And if I mean
Right.
one on one, you may be okay,
So
but
right,
over
right, right,
time,
right.
to
But
ex-
that he's being held responsible for his actions. So it's not just my opinion. Okay, here comes my opinion. We're not just biologically wired to behave in a certain way. I think there's a certain part of morality, not just what we're taught, comes from our gut. We know right and wrong when we see it. Therefore, these people are going to be held responsible for their actions, one way or another, whether it's by violence or by law, putting them in jail. Okay, because we know we're supposed to know at least right from wrong when we see it.
whoa, 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 the supposed to part is that's problematic. Like
That's problematic. Yes, exactly. That's what I'm.
I don't know.
That's right.
I don't know how you justify that though. Like, why are we supposed to know that? Like, where's that coming from?
That's coming from the heart. That's coming from the soul, brother. That's coming from the point in us, which comes from God. I would say that we know inherently certain things are right and wrong. And on top of that, society recognizes that those certain things are right and wrong.
Yeah, within a culture, we sure cultural adaptations.
Okay? So I think that's it for that. Unless you have something to add, I think that question has
No,
been exhausted. Okay,
yeah,
let's move on. Let's try this one on for you. See what if I can throw you another curveball. Okay, does the rise of materialistic or atheistic worldviews weaken the foundation of concepts like human rights, intrinsic dignity, or moral responsibility?
Yeah, so religion has its uses, right? I mean, it does. It's one function it does serve is training the members a certain way, and in some instances, it's nonviolent or humanitarian or empathetic to others in a group.
Right.
And you could say that aligns well with the survival of the group and the well-being of the group.
Right. I'm sorry if I sound a little bit distracted. That's because I'm doing a search right now. I know you can't see me at the moment, but I'm trying to look something up. I'm looking up this. I threw it up and I looked for it on ChatGPT to give me some information really quickly. And I asked, how would an atheist define morality? Because you have to have some kind of a morality, I think.
Yeah, it's a
My
good one.
opinion. But anyway, it says that an atheist may define morality in various ways, but generally, atheists derive morality from secular, naturalistic, or human centered frameworks. Okay? What is this talking about? Humanism, utilitarianism, consequentialism, social contract theory, evolutionary ethics, moral relativism. Sounds like a bunch of garbage to me. Um, for example, humanism is rooted in human needs and interests. So if my need says I need to have your bicycle, my morality says I'm gonna have your bicycle.
I mean, it's need for
Okay,
resources in general. Yeah,
empathy when it
yeah.
says, okay, when it says emphasizes empathy, compassion, and the flourishing of individuals and societies. Compassion is moralistic, is a moralistic thought based on religion. Empathy towards somebody else is not evolutionary, but it's a concept of religion.
Empathy,
Okay,
really?
uh, yeah, absolutely. Empathy, putting
Um,
yourself in somebody else's shoes,
yeah, I can't say that I
right?
agree with the fact that it strictly comes from religion. I mean, I think it
Yeah,
was.
well, I believe it does, and it's intimately connected to compassion. Empathy is going to help you put yourself in somebody else's shoes. The compassion is going to make you move to actually go and help them.
Well, I think both of those actually made it into religion from just natural behavior of humans and not the other way around,
Oh, that's a good one,
right?
Tom.
Like humans, it was humans that wrote this stuff down, right? And like, where did they get it from? I mean,
Are you sure about that?
like, there's this, yeah, I certainly don't believe that, God actually dropped, a bunch of text on people, right? It was like, hey, here's the Bible, follow this. People
Well,
wrote this shit down because, they saw what was happening within their culture at the time. And, so it
no,
came from
I
people,
have
made
to.
it into the book rather
mm,
than the people were first, not the book,
No, no, God was first, then the people, then the book.
all right? Who wrote the book?
People he told to write the book. If you don't believe that the let's talk about the Bible for some, not to single it
Oh,
out, but
God.
I know a little bit about it, just enough to get by. Let's say I'm not a scholar on the Bible. I'm not an expert by no means. But if you believe
A
the Bible
feeling
is the
this
excuse
is going
me,
to rub some people. I have a feeling this is going to rub some people wrong.
well that's okay, I guess. Um, you should have heard my conversation with Steve. Have you ever heard that episode?
Yeah, I listened to it. Yep, a while back. It was like number two or
Okay,
three or something, right?
I don't remember the number, but we said some horrible things, and then someone's probably whoever heard is probably actually offended somewhere along the line. But that's okay. As long as I provoke thought, that's what I'm kind of here to do. But anyway, if you believe that the Bible is divinely inspired or not, changes everything. You know,
Or,
you know. If you think it's just a bunch of BS written by people to subjugate other people, oh, not you personally, but I'm saying in general, if that's what you think, I kind of feel bad for you because you're limiting yourself to a certain point of view.
depends in like who uses it and for what, you know. Like the Bible itself in the beginning might have been, just that, just a collection of stories. That's cool. But, you put it in the hands of people that are interested in essentially having some control over the group, and then you start running into a problem.
Right. Well, that has happened many times in history, actually.
Yeah.
Not to single out any religious groups, I'm not here to do that, but it's happened very much through history, and even till today, people they quote the Bible incorrectly and out of context, and they're actually fooling people, and people are not getting a correct idea of who God is.
Yeah, I mean,
And
but where did the Bible come from? And like, it's another
that's a big discussion right
huge
there.
side conversation,
Yeah,
because like I
absolutely.
did a little bit of on the history of the Bible and like how it came to be, and that's that story is worth knowing, I think.
Yeah, we might have to do that one day. I don't know when, but it depends. Because if you're like if you're a secular critic of the Bible, you're gonna go through history and say these people were bad. These people wrote it. You know what I'm saying? If you want to find a flaw somewhere, you're gonna find it.
Should throw a question at like the following into ChatGPT and ask it to give you the top uh discrepancies
Well,
that you
dude,
can within
ChatGPT is
stories
actually
within the
biased.
Bible. Is what?
ChatGPT is biased. ChatGPT is not this
Sure, it does
magic
have
search, and
some
it has
biases.
bias.
Yeah.
It does have
Yeah,
bias,
because the data it was trained on, is
and
has
the people
biases
who
in it.
trained on it.
So,
If there's going to be a person involved, there's going to be bias, 100%.
yep, not arguing with that. It's not
So
perfect.
no, it's not perfect. It's good for certain information, like tell me about, I don't know, whatever, and certain histories is going to come back with a bias. But if you tell it, something, what would I don't know, what is the theory of relativity? It'll explain it to you without bias. But as soon as you ask something where it's kind of say, let's say, significant event in human history, there's going to be a bias in there, and you shouldn't
Yeah,
trust
I
everything
mean,
it says.
absolutely right. Yeah. Again, there was biases that it when it was learning, it learned from data that had biases in it, and then there was human in the loop stuff, or humans that try to correct, and those humans have biases, and when they try to improve the system, the human biases made it into the system as well.
Right.
So it's a mixed bag of like how the biases made it into it, and
Okay.
therefore what you get, what you see.
Well,
Uh,
I believe a lot of the biases, maybe I don't know how many, but a lot of the biases in ChatGPT, for example, not to rag on ChatGPT because I actually use it to look up some information, data. I don't use it to get an opinion about things. I think some of biases were put in there on purpose. So be
it's
careful when you use technology.
could be. Could be. I mean, hey, just like any other tool, it could be some people may try to use it to get an edge or advantage, for whatever it is, for whatever their goals are.
That's right. Let me throw another difficult question out there to you, Tom, and to any listeners out there. Um, Something that's maybe controversial too. Okay, here's the next question. How does the narrative of creation, in other words, us being made in the image of God, shape how we treat ourselves and each other differently than if we were simply evolved creatures? Oh, silence! I hear crickets.
Well, I mean, how do you start on this? Or where do you begin?
At the beginning.
The image of God. Well, image of God. So like, back to like what is your definition of God, right?
No, I think
I
we
mean,
all know what God. I think we all know when we say God, we mean the supreme being, uh,
yeah, but
all
is it like,
powerful, eternal God, right?
is it a humanoid form and
No, no,
body
no, no,
with
no, no, no,
like,
no, no.
super intelligence and superpower, whatever, combined in the same object slash being? Is it like,
Okay,
is it
right. Well, from what I understand, in my limited, humble, knowledge, being made in the image of God doesn't mean necessarily we're talking about two eyes and nose, two ears, and a humanoid form. We're talking about something else. We're talking about, for example, the moral image and likeness. We have a conscience. We have an inbuilt morality or some kind of a barometer, morality barometer, where we understand some certain things inherently.
yeah, like none of these things are things that somehow could not have been developed through evolution, strictly through evolution.
Okay, now you have to explain to me how that is.
Well, again, like just benefit and survival of the group could have, I think, uh,
No way.
creates these behaviors then are understood to be, morality and compassion and
No
right.
way.
It's no, you don't think so?
Absolutely not. Not in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, in my head, without thinking about it, too much, it seems like it would be totally possible, for evolution to create these behaviors in humans, especially in humans in a group that then become, then the morality and compassion and
Okay. When we say evolution, okay, and let me ask you this question: when we say when it came out of evolution and survival of the group, what are we actually talking about? Because every time I hear evolution, I think about number one, survival of the fittest. One, two, the incorrect idea of survival of the fittest, creating new species out of small, let's say, accumulated changes in time. Okay,
hmm
so survival of the fittest. Let's jump on that for a moment, right? Survival of the fittest means what? Survival of the fittest individual.
well,
Survival of
and
the
group, and
individual. How?
that
How do
it
you
applies
calculate
to
that
groups
in?
as well.
How?
Yeah, I don't know, seems sort of obvious maybe, but okay, if not, I mean, yeah, if you can, I don't know, if you, let's say, well, it's just one example, but I don't want to be sexist here, but like, yeah, I guess if you, maybe taller, it allows you to look above the grass better than, if you're not, or so that you can see further towards the horizon and I don't know, maybe see game, more frequently and therefore hunt better, or be, bring back, right, more kills home or something. If your eyesight is better, sharper, same deal. If maybe if your hand-eye coordination is better, same deal. You're a good cook and cook for the group, your group may not be as willing to chase you out because you're useless otherwise, being
Dude, dude, no, this is like the definition of making it up as you go along.
yeah, there's many flavors of being fit. Fit at what, right? Like fit. fit the needs of again the group that you're part of. Like as long as you play some useful part within the group that and you do a decent job of it, and because of your physique, because of your mental skill, because of your, I don't know, hand-eye coordination, and I don't know, right?
No,
You get at?
I'm not sure where you're going with this. Individual skills that contribute to the group could help for the group's survival. I think that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
meantime, survival of the fittest within the group means what?
Well, the more fit you are in certain things, right? The higher status and usefulness inside of the group. Like there's always going to be hierarchy of some sort, and you can have multiple hierarchies within a group.
Okay, but we're still on the group. How does the individual? I'm not grasping. I think the concept of what you're trying to say. Because how does an individual survival of the fittest could create a group that's willing to work together in a hierarchy?
Well, yeah, apply the concept to the entire group. Group as a unit.
Yeah, my group is stronger than your group, so we
Yeah,
take your hunting grounds. We kill
yeah.
all the men and take all the women.
Uh,
That's what that
some-
translates into. Not the
Something along those
of the
lines.
individual person in the group.
Well, but the group is composed of individuals, right? And if those individuals are a bigger, stronger, I don't know, faster, then your group may grow faster than the group next door, and you may be better warriors or something, and more capable of protecting yourself and maybe invading and taking over the territory of the other. I mean, it's just kind of like an animal kingdom, I suppose. You
Okay.
know, the bigger males tend to have a bigger territory, blah blah blah. That.
Okay. You've done a good job in trying to avoid the question, but we're not getting away from the question.
Uh,
Because the original question was, I will reread it. How does the excuse me, how does the narrative of creation, being made in the image of God, shape how we treat ourselves and each other differently than if we were simply evolved creatures? But if we were just simply evolved creatures and it's survival of the fittest, you wouldn't care so much about who's coming after you or who's standing next to you. It's because it's survival of the fittest. It's but one of the
claim that
basic hold on a second. That was one of the basic tenets of evolution. However, but if you realize you're made in the image of God, okay, how are we gonna treat each other individually and as a group is gonna change. The dynamic is gonna change tremendously because now we take care of the people who are ill and injured. We rely on the old people for wisdom. We worry about the children. We're more cohesive as a group because we're trying to recognize the
like
dignity in each individual that we're not going to see if we're just running around like a bunch of animals.
I think that this idea of being made an image of God is just a clear varnish on essentially what evolution accomplished. And the varnish is just a romantic notion, if you will, that
Hmm.
allows you to people to feel better about themselves, about how important they are in the universe. Because hey, if we are made like in the image of God, then we must be special. But history, especially recent history, has shown us that we are, despite of what we'd like to think, we are further and further and further away from the center of the universe, and we matter less and less and less. Yeah.
Okay. I feel that. I kind of see what's going on too, and not particularly pleased with many things that are going on. But that was very good. That was very insightful. I think being if you truly believe that all beings are made in the image and likeness of God, changes our relationship with each other drastically. Because it's not so much. I mean, there's always going to be people who are going to try to get one-upsmanship on everybody. But if you're really
Yeah,
feeling that and you're really having compassion for each other, that's when a group can become more cohesive because you have like a common thread of morality in there to help
yeah.
bind the group. That's what I think.
But but why is it necessary that, to believe this statement about being made in the image of God as opposed to, hey, this is what's good for the group? If we collectively have these rules that we follow within the group, right? Like I don't see how, the being made in the image of God is in no way in contradiction, or like does not prove in any way that these behaviors could not arise from just strictly, as part of evolution of the species.
Okay, I guess it depends on your worldview. If you believe one thing or another, kind of depends on how you were raised and your life experiences. Probably many things on top of those two. However, when let's say let's go back to what we were talking about before, social contract theory. It says morality evolves from mutual agreements that benefit everyone in society. Okay,
Mm,
do you actually
okay.
agree with this that there are mutual agreements that benefit every single person in society? Where does that idea come from?
Every single person. There's probably some laws that essentially, if you write it all out or try to tabulate it, would show that pretty much all people would consider, or most people would consider them, beneficial to have for them, and everybody else as well. Um, I don't know. I don't like right now. I can't think of an example that would
Okay, no problem. That's
match
fair
that,
enough.
but I feel like if we went through the exercise of trying to list them out, some things would pop out. Um,
Okay, evolutionary ethics. Going back to this thing about trying to stick to the same thread to get to a certain point. When it says morality is the product of evolution and natural selection, how does your morality make you more fit to survive? I know what you're thinking. I think I know
but
what you're
yeah,
thinking.
it's back to the, think about the
The
group
group.
as a unit,
Okay.
right? It's the
So
group as the animal, or it is the group is the individual. The group is the object slash unit, um, and the people within it, are just the cogs, underlying parts that, yeah, you can think of them individually, but again, which level of abstraction do we want to focus on for this discussion, right? And I think
okay.
if it's the group level, then the group is the animal, and the group survival is what we're after here. So
I don't think that works because a group is made up of individuals. That's just my reaction. I don't know if it's right or what I'm saying is right or wrong, but uh, it's individuals making up a group. You can't treat the group as and the individuals the same thing. I think it doesn't hold water. But I would like to mention one thing. I would like to make an observation. At the beginning of all this, you were leaning towards being an agnostic, and many things that you're saying were being like an atheist would use to actually define morality. So maybe you're leaning towards being an atheist, and you don't even know it.
yeah, maybe like I haven't tried to figure out which definition I fit into. I'm not either. Maybe I think I'm being a little ignorant. I haven't really Like looking up, really getting the definition down of what morality and is, or what it means to be agnostic and what it means to be, what's the other one?
Atheist,
Atheist. Yeah, like I don't really
atheistic
know what
or
the difference
agnostic.
is.
An
So
atheist, an atheist is going to deny the existence of God altogether. They're just going
okay,
to stand up and shake their fist and be like, God doesn't exist, or I don't
okay,
believe in God. Agnostic is looking for some solid proof. They don't rule out the possibility. They just haven't seen enough proof.
yeah. So that's the one that I
Okay.
would put myself into.
Okay. But by the end of this episode, that might change. Okay, in a culture that tells people to just be yourself, much as the culture that we have today, what do we do when being yourself includes the bad things? Selfishness, cruelty, robbing, brutality, assault and battery, even murder. What do we say to that?
Well, well, you brought the. I don't know. I like to think that this "be yourself" is generally used when it comes to developing yourself and becoming a better and more productive member of society,
Okay.
rather than, hey, you know, forget the rules of the group. Doesn't matter if you hinder the group, or
Okay.
back to the, hey, what's good for the group. Like if you start
Okay. Yeah, but I'm
just
saying, what do we do when just being yourself? Some people are just you can look at them and you see it in their face. They're just bad, you know. So you're telling like everybody in
no,
general, just be yourself, and some people are just bad.
you
What
come
what
right.
what do
I
we do
mean,
with that? It's a thing, you
the
know.
group slash society tries to protect itself by sending people to jail and taking them out in other ways, like exile used to be a thing, so if you don't want to just totally kill him, just get him out so they can't influence you in a negative way anymore,
Okay.
right? So they don't basically screw up the things you're trying to accomplish at home.
Right.
um
So
and
I have this
there
other
is.
question. Just a second, please.
Mhm.
Is this whole thing about just be yourself something that needs to be changed or eliminated? Is it incorrect to be telling people just be yourself?
Yeah, I think it's not okay to say that in all cases. Again, I think it's totally cool and positive and in general, good when you apply it to uh, self-development. Like, hey, be yourself. Like, what talents do you have? Figure out what your talents are. Use those talents to benefit yourself and a group, right? But you, maybe those talents are like, being a good warrior, which translates into you know, being good at killing, the opposing group or something, or maybe you're a good, I don't know, cop to figure out
Okay.
who's messing with the group from the inside and just, and hiding it. Well, hey, who is screwing us up? And, like things are going wrong, but like shit, it's really weird. Like, is somebody doing that? Like, is somebody sabotaging us from the inside and like benefits themselves, but we think, yeah, and it makes us think that it's just coincidence. Yeah.
Okay. How about we instead of saying just be yourself, how about we tell people just challenge? Excuse me, that came out wrong. Just channel your. I, I had something I wanted to say a moment ago and I forgot. Just
Let's do
there you go. Just channel your talent.
Yeah, for the
Something
good.
something
And then
weird,
for the,
something new.
but yeah, with the caveat that it has to be net positive for the group,
There you
right?
go, net positive. So if you're talking about positive and negative for the group, we're automatically insinuating we know what's positive and negative, what's good and bad. So it's actually a part of this. We already know what's good and bad
Well,
because
again, it's subjective, but
it's sub. No, no, no. We know what's good for the group. We instinctively know. You didn't want to admit it
no,
before,
no,
but now you're
no.
kind of admitting. Yeah, I think we.
Agree to disagree, but cool.
Okay, let's jump on the next question. Okay, it reads thusly: Jung talked about embracing the shadow, which is basically the parts of ourselves we repress. I guess these dark animalistic things that make up part of our who we are. I guess. Anyway, can true transformation happen without first owning those parts? What do you think, Tom?
I think it's, solving any problem starts with understanding the problem, fully. And I think understanding yourself and what kind of a creature you are and, what your tendencies are and, reactions to certain things are, is a big part of that. Um, just understanding what tendencies you have, right, doesn't mean that you have to act on all those tendencies. You can suppress some and um, use others or let others, flow freely because, hey, there is, value to you and the group, you know, in those. Um, it kind of goes back into stoicism a little bit, right? Like, hey, you can have reactions or you can, feel anger come on, but you don't necessarily have to act on feeling angry or, right? Just you don't
Right,
need to. You have an option to act in a way that's thought out when the world, pushes you one way or another, right? Like there are better answers. There are better ways of reacting to things than just pure anger, or knee jerking on things. Like,
right,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, it's good to stop and think about what might be actually beneficial and be actual solution that does something that's in fact positive in some way for you rather than just reacting like an animal.
Right. So we finally agreed on something today. I agreed with that. Miracles can happen. So we finally agreed on something. Okay, let me jump on to the next one. We're kind of starting to wrap up with the questions here. I think we have two more. Yeah, we have two more. Okay, interestingly enough, thought experiment, let's say. Can we create a society built on the belief that humans are good without any spiritual or transcendent grounding?
Say probably. There's no reason we can't come up with uh let's say stories, right? Or another version of, a Bible or, holy book or, I don't know, human guide, guide to be human. Uh, tells us stories that are, very much an improvement on what the Bible is or other holy texts are, right? Tells us stories that allow us to. Why shouldn't we have a version 2 and 3 and 4 of the guiding principles for humans that serve not only, maybe smaller group that's closest to us, but the entire, all the different countries and populations around the world, be more inclusive, be more compassionate, have rules in place that
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
allow
we're
you to
gonna have
have.
to disagree again. We're gonna have to agree to disagree again. My thought is basically that a society without the acknowledgement of a spiritual side to us that tends towards only belief that we are just these evolutionary beings brought about through accidents, an innumerable amount of improbable accidents that happened in the correct order just to get us here, to me makes no sense. So I don't see a functioning society without some kind of a spiritual or transcendent grounding. That would be a society worth living in. Me personally.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with that one. Um,
Okay, man, I love it.
believe that humans can society built on the belief that humans. So yeah, you're not necessarily saying that the society needs to be one that's pleasant to live within, or at least interesting to live within, as opposed to being pure hell. So, is it possible to have some form of society? Yeah, probably, right? No, no, if you start
You're
caveat,
overlooking the good part. You have a society built on the belief that humans are good instead of bad without some kind of measuring rod. You have to have some kind of a comparison. You have to know, you really, before you understand good, you have to know what bad is, and vice versa. You
again, then
understand
that's
certain
subjective,
things.
right?
I think there's a lot that we're taking for granted. When we say subjective, we throw it around too liberally, I think, because certain things you understand better or at all when you experience the opposite.
Sure.
So, for example, we say good and bad. We know what we're talking about. It's whether you want to admit it or not, is the question.
Well,
Not just you personally. I'm saying in general.
well, again, it's having, having lived long enough to be on both sides of any one situation, right? Being the one hurting versus the one being hurt, or like the one stealing versus the one being stolen from, right? Like, and
Okay,
good
sounds
without
like
yeah.
you're stumped. Sounds like you're stumped.
Well, I
Okay,
don't
no
know where to,
problem.
like, I don't know where to take it.
Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but anyway, I'm not sure what to do with what you just said. That you don't know what to do with it, but that's fine. I got one more question that I can use to torture you with, and hopefully this will make you squirm even more. We'll see what happens. Okay, last one. What gives us hope that we can rise above our base instincts, and what practices help us nourish the noble part of our nature? I'm not even sure if I can answer this myself. What was I thinking of coming up with this stuff? Okay, let's start. Let's break it down. Let's break this question down because it's got like a few parts to it. So let's start with the first part. What gives us hope that we can rise above our base instincts?
I mean, shoot, evolution is gonna. Well, we're evolving in many ways, right? We're evolving in general.
Okay,
So just
what happens when people don't believe in evolution?
well, what do you make of, technological progress? Isn't that, some form of evolution?
No, absolutely not.
Like as in well, I suppose it matters, what it is specifically we're talking about. We're talking about society evolving, the human's biological species as an animal evolving, like, brains getting bigger, or I don't
This
know.
the species. I you're saying the species as an animal, the human species as an animal.
Yeah, Homo sapiens, right?
I
Like,
I tend to reject. Sorry to disagree, but I tend to reject that notion that we're just these animals.
what? Okay, in what way? So we're not animals. We're like, what are we? So if you reject that, what are
We weren't
you?
no, we weren't created that way, in my opinion. I have to lean towards the creationist view that we were created distinct and separate from the animals, and that in the case that we were made in the image and likeness of God.
Distinct and separate from animals. What do you make of
Yes.
chimps and gorillas? I mean, shit.
What about them?
They
do
kind
you
of
do
look
you do
like
you
us a bit,
do you re- do you really feel? Yeah, well, the blueprints are there. They're made by the same creator. So maybe there's a similarity in there that you don't particularly feel comfortable with, or
I
maybe you
mean,
do, or maybe you don't. I'm not sure.
what's the great argument for us being anything different than just another branch in, evolution?
Creationism.
Yeah, that's not good enough for me. Sorry.
Well, that argument doesn't hold for many people. I understand that,
I,
but
I
if
don't
you
know.
if you want to if you want to string together all of these improbable, an inordinate number of improbable circumstances that created DNA to wire characteristics into many different types of animals and creatures and insects through some kind of a fluke of the universe. It's too improbable. I just can't wrap my head around it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
There may be a problem with you being able to wrap your head around it or not, or like, being willing to forego, how big or small those chances actually are when if you consider the scale of the universe, right?
It's absolutely astronomical.
Yeah. So, but like it may or may not be special. Like we're not really sure yet, right? Like where are the aliens? There is this thing about, okay, how is it that despite, the theory about the great filter is, how is it that it seems like we're supposed to see a bunch of other life or intelligence out there, but we don't. So what's up with that? Um, so that either the theory needs, adjusting, there is some problem with it that's not at all obvious that we just haven't figured out yet, or what? I mean, if it eventually turns out that we are in fact like the only freaking thinking thing, or like, called a form of life within like, you know, half the freaking size of the universe or something, right? Maybe there's like one other, I don't know, life form out there, and it's it, then yeah, I don't think we understand really what life is just yet and how common it actually is, outside of the solar system or even Earth, right?
Wow, this is getting interesting. I was not expecting to go down the path of aliens in the universe, but if you want, we could talk about it. We could try to fit it in somehow. I'm not sure how. I don't, conceptualize it very clearly in this conversation, but
So back to the question, right? What gives us hope that we can rise above our base instincts? And what practices help us nourish the better angels of our nature? Um,
well,
rise
actually,
above our
change the
base
wording. It was
instincts.
actually the noble part of our nature. I kind of changed the
So
question.
you
Maybe
want to you want to
I
help me
never sent you that.
understand, or give me an example of what you mean by noble part of our nature? What is noble about our nature?
Altruism, compassion, empathy,
Yeah, so
charity.
sacrificing. So all
Yes.
those tell me that, or suggest to me that what you mean is, sacrificing the individual for the wellness
No, no, no. It's talking about
of the group.
what practices would actually nourish the noblest part of our natures? What could we do to actually strengthen the noble part of our nature? Because it's there.
Or by noble, you mean things that individuals can do despite maybe for the benefit of the group, despite that being, whatever it is that they do being harmful to them, or maybe, uh, right,
What is it that we
even,
could do that would be able to help us to prop up and strengthen the part of our nature that we would call, let's say, noble? The fact that we are altruistic, charitable, loving, helpful, considerate of others, compassionate. What can we do to make those parts of us stronger?
so have more of that in the world, essentially, right?
Yes,
Yeah, well, I mean, personally, I'd like to see some solutions to having wars, and using violence to solve conflict. But I think that would go a long way. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not even sure
It,
myself. I'm sitting here thinking about it. Well, one idea is coming to me now. Now that I'm thinking about it, actually, I think if you want to be more charitable, if you want to have more charity in the world, you need to do it and keep doing it until it becomes like second nature. That so you don't even think twice about doing it. That you just do it. That's like the only thing I can think of in this particular moment.
I like to look at well, I guess all problems with, first asking myself, what's really the goal of this exercise? Like you gonna have to choose what it is you're going to optimize for when you try to solve a, problem, right? And then that needs to be like well defined so that you have a very specific goal that you're shooting for. Then you can adjust, the parameters of your solution to hit that, like without first being really specific about what are you optimizing for. It's like you can't really get there other than by chance, and then good luck with that, right? Because that might be like a one in a million.
I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think if you want, who said that you be the change you want to see in the world. So if you wanted to see more compassion in the world, you start showing more compassion, and hopefully other people will see that and start to become more compassionate themselves. It's the only thing I
Yeah, but
can
that
think
that
of.
sounds like a somewhat of an individual goal, which is fine. Is can you do that? Sure. Is it? I think as a society, right, we don't have good mechanisms like to agree on as a group, as a society, what it is that we want to really accomplish, despite of our human nature, despite of our, based on what we've learned through history, right? uh, Despite of what we, of our whims that change from day to day, despite of our illogical actions, in many situations. Um, like
Okay.
improving society, I think is going to take, or will necessarily take some discipline, but being disciplined over, long stretches of time and in many situations means that you kind of, is you can't be lazy, right? And it's not easy not being lazy. Like you kind of got to
That's
drive
right.
yourself to achieve certain outcomes. So, certain parts of the population are motivated and driven to be like that and tell themselves and believe that it's okay to, bust ass to achieve a certain outcome. But, there's even larger sections of the population where you just like want to live, a peaceful life and have it good enough and not strive, for this, that, and the other thing. Um, so,
Okay.
how do you get that portion of the population to play along, in this game of uh, adhering strictly, to some new rules that we want to try as a society, right?
Okay.
It's,
I think we're gonna leave that because we're kind of now we're not running out of time, but we've I think the episode has gone on long enough to get the idea of what we're talking about. Okay, so I'm gonna leave your question open ended. I'm not gonna try to answer that, but I
all
will
right.
say this. Okay, I think this has been a very good conversation. I think it's been very powerful. We might have to revisit this somewhere down the line in the future, not with the same questions, of course, but with different questions. But the topic I think bears repeating somewhere down the line. Okay, this tension between what we call maybe the beast and the angel that is within us fighting to take control, the nobler parts versus the animalistic parts. And most people, I think, they're bubbling underneath the surface, and they're just waiting to make themselves known. At the snap of a fingers, you could be one or the other. And basically, it's not so easy to control this. Depending on the circumstances, people have been known to do quite crazy things given the correct circumstances. But anyway, Tom, my friend, listen. Anything you want to add before we leave? Anything that you surprised you today, or something that you think was worth mentioning?
No, I mean, shoot, I am, with the most recent advances in AI, I'm hoping that the world's gonna, certain key factors with how society operates are gonna get sufficiently tweaked or changed or replaced that, we will, in fact, move in a better direction,
That's very dangerous.
as a species. I mean,
That's
shit.
very dangerous. No, no, that's very dangerous because once you factor in the human bias, you're looking to AI to we're gonna do okay. This is gonna be a discussion for the next for another time because at the very end of this conversation, you opened a new can of worms.
Yep.
Uh, that is quite possibly a two-part discussion. You know, two episodes on the same topic. But anyway, go ahead. Please, I'm sorry for interrupting. I apologize. Please continue what you were saying.
Look, I don't think we're gonna have the society, and it's will advance in a good or not so good direction no matter what, but we're gonna definitely change over time. My hope is that we figure out some things and be able to avoid many mistakes that we have made within history, and just I don't know, be better, whatever that means eventually.
Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, guys, the episode is done for today. So if today's episode resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on what you believe about human nature, where that belief come from, whether it's still serving you. Share this episode with someone who loves these deep dives and let us know what you think. You can contact us on X, Facebook, and Instagram. So until next time, question what you know, challenge what you believe, and see where the truth takes you. Goodbye, everybody. Tom, take it easy, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Every question is a doorway, every answer is a light. We're all searching for a meaning through the long and restless night. Question what you know, challenge what you believe, and see where the truth takes you. Step beyond what feels certain, let your heart begin to see the questions that awaken all we're meant to be. Question what you know, challenge what you believe, and see where the truth takes you. Not every answer's found in the light. Sometimes it's the journey through the unknown that brings us home. Question what you know, challenge what you believe, and see where the truth takes you. Not every answer is found in the light. Sometimes it's the journey through the unknown that brings us home. Question what you know, challenge what you believe, and see where the truth takes you. Not every answer's found in the light. Sometimes it's the journey through the unknown that brings us home. Question what you know, challenge what you believe, and see where the truth takes you.